Hello everyone and welcome to Sci-Fi Zone, where we celebrate science fiction movies and TV shows from the past, the present and the future. I'm here today with Claire and MPS and we're coming to you from the wonderful comic book store of Alternate Worlds. One of the first things that we want to cover off, very simple, is actually great animated TV shows and movies. And with respect to anime and manga, we're not going to discuss that at all because that is worthy of an entire episode or two itself. So we're just going to stick with primarily, I guess you could say, Western shows. Did you have any Western shows that you were going to bring up, or did I just shoot you down in flames with
I could have brought up Brave Star, but that's a Western show. It's a Western cartoon. Okay. Never mind, let's not talk about Brave Star. Look, I got three that I find that are very... I think they're top of the range in terms of... Well, for starters, Batman the Animated Series from 92 to 95. It was one of the greatest cartoon series for superheroes that had come out, and is still today what people reference back to for animated TV shows in terms of cartoons. Now look, there's plenty more before that, but this was the best version of Batman. Even when they did the Superman adventures, they were pretty average. But the Batman animated series, fantastic. In terms of animated movies, I'd say WALL-E. You know, WALL-E was a brilliant film, very cute, very sweet, and very cleverly done by Ben Burt, who did all the sound production on it. So not a single word was spoken, it was all sounds.
Simple, yeah.
You know, absolutely beautiful to watch, sad, you know, so take a couple of tissues with you when you watch that one again. And the other one I've got is the Animatrix series. So there was a series of 7 short films that were set before the Matrix film. So we talked about the Matrix before. These were 7 animated films by 7 different groups or 7 different styles, and they were fantastic. The best one I thought from that was the Flight of the Osiris, which was set just minutes before the actual Matrix film. Okay, and it's a beautifully, I don't know if it holds up today, but a 3D animated film. It goes for about 10 or 15 minutes, and it's absolutely beautiful to watch. But it sets up the Matrix, and I think they're the three of my favourite animated series.
You know, there's been a lot of TV series and a lot of movies. We'll just stick with TV series for the moment. I think you would have to say at the top of the pile for maybe not the best, but the most iconic and sci-fi animated TV series, you know, Western series, has to be the Jetsons. Everybody loves the Jets. I mean, I think it was made in the 1960s, if I recall.
Hanna-Barbera, yep.
Completely like predicting the future. I'm not sure what year it was actually set in. It would be interesting to see if any of that technology has actually come to fruition in our modern day society. It's still on the way, with the exception of flying cars, obviously.
Cars certainly don't sound like this.
Oh, there you go. But you got to admit,
don't sound nowadays. They don't sound the way they used to.
They don't sound like anything.
That's
like, here's a car going down the road.
So if you have a hybrid, you could probably actually put in the sound of the car from the Jetsons as it hurbles along the streets.
Or you can hire me for quite a high rate to sit there and go...
You can record it all for you too. But there's actually a lot more shows than you probably realise. Like, for example, Star Trek had an animated series which was made in the 1970s. And the cool thing about that is it actually features the voices of the actual actors. And the stories themselves were actually leftover stories from season 4, of the original series that never got produced. So if you like your Star Trek, you might not even be aware that there is an animated series. Planet of the Apes also got produced as an animated series as well, showing a more technologically advanced planet than was depicted in the movies, but that's actually more correct to the books. There are more Star Wars TV shows than you probably realise. These days, of course, you've got your Resistance and your Rebels, and X amount of years ago you had the Clone Wars, but you also had the Droids and Ewoks shows from the 1980s. I don't know if you guys even remember them. They were like iconic. Fans absolutely loved them. Very, very hard to get hold of for a long period of time on video, but they've been out and about for a bit now. So if you like your Star Wars, you have to check those out as well, just to see C-3PO and R2 in their adventures, which is kind of groovy. 2 others that sort of caught my eye was good old Transformers. If I recall, Transformers, long before it was a series of movies by Michael Bay, of course, was a TV series. More than meets the eye.
Actually, it was an actual cinematic release film in 1986.
Oh, really?
Yes, after the series. So the series ran for a couple of years and they released it in 86 in the cinema.
Okay.
So that was a feature film and one of the better versions of Transformers in terms of film.
I'm surprised you didn't bring up your He-Man series?
Oh, look, these are my favourite, and I didn't bring them up for a couple of reasons because there's too many to name. Like, I could have brought up He-Man, I could have brought up Birdman, Galaxy Trio, I could have brought up Blue Falcon and Dog Wonder, I could have brought up Inspector Gadget. There's all these.
I like how you say you could have brought them up
Inspector
and you actually bring them up. And you've actually forgot your Space Ghost. He's another
I was
animated.
getting there. I was getting there with the Hanna-Barberas. So there's a whole lot of them, but these are the three that I really, really enjoy. Now, don't get me wrong, I do love my He-Man, but it's the reason I enjoy these so much is they're not as outdated as He-Man. He-Man has a lot of stock standard footage and it dates itself quite easily. And the same with all these other shows. You had only 3 versions of how the ships went, sort of thing. So it dated them so badly, which is why the animated series for Batman was so good, because it didn't use stock standard footage. It was a completely new stuff all the time.
So what it goes to show is there's a lot more animated series out there than you realise. There are plenty of them covering all sorts of genres. And if the kiddie stuff really isn't your thing, you can get a little bit adult. And the show that I can recall was Tripping the Rift. Definitely not one for children. Not the violent side, but a lot of sexual innuendo. So I don't know if you guys have ever seen that at all. It's very clever, very funny, but a little bit wrong at the same time. So
There's a new series on Netflix at the moment too called Love and Robots.
oh yes, there is too. Yes,
Yeah,
yes.
I've only seen a couple of episodes, but really, really enjoyed it.
Yeah.
I think that's going to be quite a good one to watch.
So what that means is there's plenty out there for everybody of all tastes, of all eras. How good is that? Anyway, we are going to quickly wrap that up. We're going to go to a break and we will be back right after these messages. Don't go away.
Alternate Worlds has been specialising in comics and collectibles for over 40 years, with a back issue collection of over 500,000 comics covering the golden age right through to latest releases, including signed and slabbed gems. They also have an enormous graphic novel collection, one of the largest ranges of manga in the country, as well as toys, statues and pops, and new items are arriving every Wednesday. Each month, Alternate Worlds hosts its own premium comic day, where all the rare treasures are put on display for inspection and purchase. The store also runs regular tournaments and competitions for both comic and gaming fans. And for local and interstate and international buyers, the Alternate Worlds website features their complete range of products, so whether you come in online or in store, visit them soon.
Welcome back. This is a quick discussion we're going to have on movie remakes or reboots, depending on what kind of term you like to use. Not the fact that they exist, because some people do shudder in their boots when they hear the term that something is being remade. There are people out there who are actually so glad that the movie Forbidden Planet has not been remade, which is kind of groovy because it's a classic. But there are others that have been remade. Some have worked and some haven't. And this is a bit of a quick discussion on the ones that we think actually worked, that actually came out all right. As good as, if not better than, the original. And it's hard to believe when you're off the top of your head, you'd be thinking nothing beats the original, but sometimes you can come up with movies and you go, actually that worked out quite well. We've just got a small list that we want to run past. I'm not too sure if you two have even seen these before. The Blob is the first one that comes to mind. The original version was absolutely fantastic with Steve McQueen. They did a remake of it in the 80s. In 1988, and what for me made the film work wasn't the fact that it was set in the 80s, but the Blob was actually quite scary. It was actually moving around a lot more freely, and it's actually a very, very frightening film if you get your head into that mindset, because when it consumes someone, it pretty much ripped them to pieces. And there's a fantastic sequence in the film where a lady is trying to ring the police officer to save her. She's actually in a phone box, and the Blob's completely encased the phone box, and the police officer she's trying to contact is already been killed, and his half mutilated corpse is actually pressing against the glass. Oh, and it is like, you have no hope, and it is an absolutely great remake. Another one is The Thing. Now, I'm very, very, very partial to The Thing. Yeah, The Thing from Another World, which was then remade in 1982 by John Carpenter. The primary difference between the two movies is the fact that the 82 version was a lot more gruesome. Okay, there's a lot of violence in it, there's a lot of blood, but that sort of actually works for the story, because the Thing isn't, like in the original movie, a being running around who's been created from plants. So he's actually an alien, a true alien. And for that reason, you never know who the Thing is, because it takes over people and consumes them and replicates them. And for that reason, you never know who is the thing, and that's what makes it so good. He works on that paranoia with all these people stuck in Antarctica. And if you saw the 2011 version, some people think that's a remake of the 82 version, and it's not. It's actually a prequel, because in the 82 version, the film starts off in the Norwegian base, and the 2011 movie is actually at the Norwegian base. So have you seen any of those two movies before?
No.
Very, very cool. War of the Worlds, classic George Pell movie from the 50s, remade in the 2000s with Tom Cruise in the lead. I thought it was fantastic, made by Steven Spielberg. And what appealed to me the most, aside from the fact that the war machines actually had the 3 legs, was that Tom Cruise's character, he was just an ordinary guy. He wasn't like a super scientist, and he wasn't like somebody with these really connections to the government. He was just a normal dude, just trying to save his family. And that, I thought, was a really, really good concept for a character. And because at the end, when the Martian machines are all dying, he doesn't do anything. He's just walking along with all the groups of people, seeing what's happening. So I actually thought that that was a really, really good film, well worth checking out.
It's an interesting point of view to tell that story from.
It is too. There's a classic scene in the movie where there's the army are fighting the Martians on the other side of a hill, and you see it in, like, it's in the distance, so you can sort of see what's happening over the hill. And his character doesn't even go over the hill to have a look. If anything, he runs the other direction.
Yeah.
And his kid, his son, actually wants to go. So he didn't even get to see that. Whereas in a normal movie, he'd be like, "Oh, let's go, all going, guns blazing and checking it all out."
In the middle of it,
And that was really, really, really cool. Another one was The Fly. Now, the original version of The Fly, the scientists just had the fly head, whereas in the 86 version, Seth Brundle actually gets consumed by a fly and actually transforms from one to the other, but because it's mixed up the DNA and the genetics, he doesn't turn out as well as he should, and it's a bit more of a gruesome version, but the connection between his character and the girl Veronica is what Gina Davis, and they actually ended up, her and Jeff Goldblum actually ended up going out together after this movie because of that film. Was very, very well done, and but it is a little bit adult, a bit nasty, and a bit violent. So keep that in mind. But totally different versions of that particular story. Another one, Total Recall. I love the remake of Total Recall. That was really, really good. The original Arnie movie was a little bit more humorous, a little bit more like, you know, bit of fun. Let's go to Mars, and it's all very exciting. Whereas in this version, the Colin Farrell, I think it is, a remake was excellent. Had a lot of very Blade Runner-esque look to it, and no Mars at all, completely different in that regard, but the concept was still the same. And
it was actually a lot closer to the story in the original book too. I loved the original, the Arnie version. That was always a favourite of mine. And so when the new one came out, I was a little bit hesitant to watch it. And because I'd seen the ads and it looked like it was very different. But I liked it. I really liked the way it worked. It was very, very different. But
and so you could almost class them as two totally different movies. Aside from the whole memory implant thing, they're totally different pictures. And other than that, the stories just don't connect at all. They're completely different. So.
Just find that the Arnie one was just slightly slower paced. And they were trying to bring it to Mars, and they sort of went to and from. But this one was just full on from the get-go. You know, there was no. The only thing I didn't enjoy about this film was the fact that the two lead girls, looked almost the same.
Yeah, there was a bit of confusion.
Back in the beginning with the other one. Other than that, the film was great. If they had to change the hair of one, that would have been fine. But it was just too hard to sort of tell sometimes who was he actually talking to.
The thing that I found amusing about it is that in Total Recall, the whole Earth has been polluted by contaminants or whatever, and only 2 countries survived, England and Australia. There you go. And it's actually there's a tunnel that connects the 2 of them. So I think that was kind of groovy.
It was an interesting concept, that tunnel through the Earth.
Yes.
Like, imagine going to work every day through the middle of the Earth.
I know, go figure, eh?
I
think the first couple of years you'd be sitting there in awe, and then the rest of it would be, it's just another day in the tunnel.
Oh, another day in the tunnel. I love it. Yeah, exactly right. And my final one that I had listed down here was The Invasion of the Body Snatchers. Now, the 1950s versions was an absolute classic, but it was remade in 1978 with Donald Sutherland, and it was actually quite well done. Now, of course, in the story, it's like the plants it's a bit like The Thing. Plants are taking people over, and they're being replicated for their nefarious needs, and it's well worth having a look at. It's probably a little dated by today's standards, but at the time when it came out, it actually did very well for itself. But yeah, stick with the original 2 if you want to. Suss it out if you get a chance. They're my pick of the ones that I actually think worked out quite well. So
it's interesting because most of yours are horror, and I haven't seen them.
Oh, they're science fiction with horror elements.
I'm not saying they're not science fiction, but they are also horror, and they're seen quite mostly as horror movies by most people, I would think. And that's probably why I haven't seen them. I couldn't watch the remake of The Fly. I got partway through it and I had to stop.
Yeah, there are some elements to it that are a little bit wrong and a bit hard to swallow. So yes.
But on that note, and talking about horror and talking about plants, Little Shop of Horrors.
Oh yes, of course. Yes.
I love the remake of that.
Yes.
The original was, I can't remember when it was made, but it was quite old, and it had a different ending.
Yes.
But the remake with Steve Martin as the dentist and Rick Moranis. That's Rick Moranis as Seymour.
Yeah.
That was so much fun.
Yeah.
So much fun.
You know, they shot that in 2 to 3 days.
That was the original.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, they only had that amount of time, and it was after Christmas. It was like Boxing Day in a couple of days because they just couldn't do anything else with it.
Someone will correct me. I think it was a Roger Corman special, but they rehearsed a lot of stuff and then filmed it in 2 days and one night, or 1 night and 2 days, or something. That's how the story goes. Jack Nicholson was in it too, which is one of his earlier roles.
Right. Yeah.
Very cool stuff.
So some of what you had, I had on my list. The other ones I'll chuck in there was the Godzilla remakes. The new ones are absolutely fantastic. I love them. Even though I did like the 1998 Matthew Broderick version. That was a bit of fun and that was cute. But
except for the design of the Godzilla, they changed that and that was a bit
it looked a bit weird, but you know.
Anyway, but I agree. I actually quite enjoyed it too, actually, funnily enough.
Which means Kong, Skull Island was good as well, as opposed to the old. Look, you love King Kong because he climbs the Empire State Building, all that sort of stuff, but it's just too, whatever, motion claymated sort of thing. And this
It becomes a bit hard to watch.
This was good to see. He was just put on an island and it worked. And now he's going to grow and become part of that universe as well. One which I'm surprised you didn't pick was Planet of the Apes, the new series of those.
Yeah, I wasn't. In terms of remakes, the 2001 version was actually an actual remake, whereas the Rise and Dawn and War were pretty much like a prequel reimagining rather than a strict remake, which is why I didn't include them. Otherwise, I would have.
See, I like those. I thought they were all good, especially the earlier one, because it was telling a story that I thought was going to work, and then they just stopped doing it and went on from there. And I got one more last one, and that was Spider-Man. The latest Spider-Man with Homecoming and Far From Home are brilliant. Probably, well, even the Tobey Maguire ones and I can't think of what the other kid's name was, between were far better than, say, Spider-Man and the Dragon's Challenge, which was 1978.
Indeed. So there are some very, very good remakes out there, well worth having a look at, plus watch the originals as well. Now, we have to wrap this up, so if you haven't done so already, be sure to subscribe to our channel and click on the bell for all the latest updates for everything that's going on around the place. Next week, we're actually going to be discussing television show introductions. How cool is that? So if you haven't had a chance, be sure to stay in the zone and we'll catch you next time. Bye for now.